Good evening. I'll call this meeting of the Johnson City Board of Commissioners for Thursday, January 4th to order. If you would rise for the invocation by Titus O'Brien, teaching pastor with Grace Fellowship Church, and then stay standing for the pledge.
O Lord, you're the ruler of us all, and you have graciously allowed us to be your image bearers, your placeholders, and your servants in your world to reign and rule in your place. And so often we find it hard to just govern ourselves, much less anyone else. We end up doing things we wish we wouldn't do and fail to accomplish some of our deepest desires. Sometimes we can't even figure out what it is we really want. And we end up failing ourselves and each other. And so we humbly ask that you would grant to us and to these leaders in our community the enthusiasm and the energy that comes from your Spirit, that we might be so filled with your love that others would be attracted to your reign and to your rule, and allow these leaders to be so guided by your wisdom that we all would marvel at your grace and sense your presence at work in our own community and in our own lives. As those who are ruled by your grace, we ask that we would witness how service can govern as we try to follow the example of your Son, who gave everything for us. And we ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus, and through your Spirit. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Mr. Peterson, before we start, I think there was an item we would like to defer under 4 appointments, the appointment to the Johnson City Historic Zoning Commission. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
To defer.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Jennings, call a roll, please.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Brocklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Wise?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brock? Yes. Mayor Tamita?
Yes.
First order of business is consideration of the minutes from your meeting held on Thursday, December the 21st.
Do you have any corrections or amendments to the minutes? Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Motion, second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Jennings, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Brocklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Wise?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Mayor Tamita?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of a beer license for Jason's Ichiban LLC located at 3101 West Market. This is a Class 1 beer license on premise. All the appropriate reviews have been made. Finding no disqualifying factors, we would recommend your approval.
Very good. Is the applicant here?
I'm here for it.
Okay. If you'd step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, please.
Larry Williams, 909 West Hillcrest Drive, Johnson City, Tennessee.
Williams, have you read the rules and regulations regarding the sale of beer in the city of Johnson City?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree to abide by those rules?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions for us?
No, sir.
Do you have any questions for the applicant?
Move approval.
We have a motion, a second?
Second.
Okay. Any
Thank you.
further discussion? Ms. Jennings, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Brocklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Wise?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Mayor Tamita?
Yes. And Mr. Williams, for the tens of people watching, would you like to tell them about the restaurant?
But yes, it's a fairly new restaurant. He opened up a couple months ago. It's a Asian cuisine and sushi bar. So probably the best Asian food in town, and definitely the best sushi if you like sushi. But I'm not a sushi lover myself, so I won't be partaking in
You're
any of
running your
that.
advertisement.
Stop while you're ahead.
All the other
I
Asian
love
foods
sushi. I
I'll
hate
eat.
sushi, but I love this one. Is this in the Walmart shopping center?
It is,
Walmart?
yes, sir.
Okay,
So-
very good. Well, I'll be the judge of that.
Okay, yeah, come,
Whether it's in the Walmart shopping center?
Whether it's the best Asian food or not.
come down and try it out.
I will.
Love to have
Thank
you.
you.
Tell Jason I said hello.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Sorry he wasn't here tonight.
Yeah, well, he's cooking.
I understand.
So,
It's good to see you.
good to
Thank
see
you,
you
Larry.
on. Y'all
Thanks,
have a
Larry.
great day.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Peterson?
The next order of business is consider a request for a street closure for the Mountain States Health Alliance Run for Your Buns 5K to be held on Saturday, March the 3rd. There will be no tents or other temporary structures, and beer is not allowed within the area. We've reviewed it and would recommend approval of the request.
Very good. I don't believe the applicant is here.
Usually Karen Hubbs.
Yep.
Probably step in for her, being a little familiar with this event.
I think it's a,
And
Not
this
the first time.
primarily follows the route of
Yep.
the trail around MedTech Park and the sidewalks there along it. This is a route that's frequently used.
all right, do I have a
I'd make a
motion?
motion to approve.
Second.
Very good. Motion and second. Any discussion? Ms. Jennings, you call the roll, please.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Brocklin? Yes. Commissioner Wise?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Mayor Tomita?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of the consent agenda.
Well, right to left, anybody, would anybody other than Commissioner Van Bronckhorst? Anybody like to pull anything for individual discussion?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Wise?
No, thank you, Mayor. None, sir.
Done.
Very good. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Ms. Jennings, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Brocklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Wise?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brock?
Yes.
Mayor Tomita?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of a lease agreement between Legacy 3 LLC and the city for a property situated at 701 East Maple Street. Mr. Stahl, if you would explain the issue, please.
This lease agreement came before us some time back. A member of the biking community came to City Hall and mentioned that there was a interested business owner that would like to consider a partnership with the city. He was in the process of acquiring the old country store at was addressed off of East Maple Street at 701, but it's really at the corner of Alabama and East Maple. It's been there since 1922, but not in use for a number of years. And the concept was that he wanted to have a store business operation that was complementary to the Tweetsie Trail, and recognizing that he would be getting customers to the business. He also knew that there would be folks just coming off the trail, perhaps looking for restroom opportunities in the business, and he had relatively limited space. And the idea that was presented to us is that would the city be interested in going into a partnership or a lease arrangement of some kind that would basically provide exterior restrooms that his business could use, but we also could use to the greater good of the Tweetsie Trail. And what the idea was, and of course the property was rezoned. This concept came before you back in the summer to rezone the property for the business use, and in that it was conceptually called the Tweetsie Trail Outpost with perhaps some small concessions, some exterior tables you can't see right there, and the restrooms would be on the side facing the Tweetsie Trail off of Alabama Street. And basically the proposal was to install two restrooms fully plumbed with heat. These would be operated, the proposal was that we would pay for the restrooms construction, which would include a one-time payment that would be considered also a perpetual lease. He would provide the electricity, he would construct the restrooms, and then the city would maintain the restrooms and open and close the restrooms. And the reason why that was presented, while he did not have a clear understanding of his business hours, what they might be, we knew that the Tweetsie Trail is open from dawn to dusk, and we also knew that we only had, and you all are familiar with the Tweetsie Trail, we have basically a 10-mile trail system. We have at the front of the trail, the trailhead, the section that's in the city, we are currently served by That is an outhouse right there at the trailhead.
You should landscape around
And,
that.
Phil here put a trash can, we thought that was a good addition, and, this is at
He
the,
does have quite a flair.
this is right behind the wall as you enter
Couple of arborvitaes out
right
of
past the
the
sign. We also know that, and you all know, that Elizabethton has a bathroom system. They open that seasonally at Lions Park, but that's at the 4-mile mark. And they also, within the past year, I believe, constructed a restroom downtown, which is adjacent to the Tweetsie Trail in Elizabethton. That's at the 8-mile mark. So our thought would be if we could have a restroom that was, accessible to the public, just yards from the Tweetsie Trail, heated year-round, open and closed, maintained by the city. You then have a restroom compatible to the two Elizabethton versions at the 4 and 8 mile mark. So our responsibilities would be to obviously pay for what would be considered a one-time payment based on the actual cost of construction and consider a perpetual lease, a one-time payment. The lease cannot be terminated as long as the city performs its obligations under the lease. The lessor would pay the electricity, the city would pay for the water sewer, and again, we would operate and clean and maintain the buildings. It was asked of me, well, would the business have access to the restrooms after hours? Because his concern was, our business may expand, and if the trail's closed at dusk, and we're still open for business, and the answer was yes. I mean, obviously, he would have access to the bathrooms, but we could possibly, and we have talked about having a time lock system, so he could access it if he needed to, but the trail bathrooms could actually lock and open up on a timer system. And so he has agreed, and as you can see by the document in front of you, that he's agreed to accept this lease proposal. We feel it's a good public-private partnership to basically serve a business, obviously, but also for the greater good of the community. And Mr. Epps has worked out the terms of the lease, and I think he believes it to be fair and balanced in terms of basically serving the business and serving the greater community, and that's why it's presented to you tonight. So again, this is an option we felt obligated to bring to you, and if it's worthy of consideration, great. If not, we still have some basic services to provide here. So.
I'm going to have a hard time with this, Mr. Stahl, because you know how much I've loved, as you called it, the outhouse here. So glad to get rid of it.
The need for restrooms there is clear. There's a lot of use. The cost to Elizabethton's restrooms downtown were roughly, what number?
I thought it was closer to about $80,000.
So this public-private partnership results in a cost to taxpayers of less than half of an alternative, while at the same time encouraging business development adjacent to the trail. It seems like a pretty straightforward, mutually beneficial arrangement.
And again, if it is a long-term arrangement, another way, Phil has two of these structures along the trail. One is at the Rotary Pavilion down the trail. We're paying about $10,000 a year right now under the current arrangement.
I think it's safe to say you had us at flush toilets, and I would make a motion we approve.
Let me ask one question first. Are we protected if this property gets transferred? Is the investment
Yes.
protected? Because I don't see it clearly stated in there.
Section 19, or 18.
Section 18.
Section 18 is where Mr. Epps has referenced that protection is established.
It isn't where some of us may be accustomed to seeing that language. Jimbo and I were looking at that earlier today. It is in a little different place than what we usually see it in a lease document.
And that,
Perpetuity.
to me, that doesn't stipulate that specifically, but that's adequate.
Yes, our attorney says it, yeah.
Okay.
It is adequate.
The judge
All right.
agreed with that, yeah.
Don't want to see us making an investment, find out that 2 years from now, we can't use the restrooms.
Eminent domain.
All right.
Good question. We did.
I think you had a motion. I
Yeah.
think you had a second, too.
Let's go. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Ms. Jennings, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Brocklin,
Yes.
Commissioner Wise,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Tomita.
Yes.
That brings you to the conclusion of this evening's agenda.
I believe we just set a record.
We're not done yet.
Oh, yes, we are. No, anybody have anything they'd like to say, since we got a little bit of time?
With water running through your pipes, it's not over yet.
And thank you to our water sewer employees that are out there in freezing cold weather, waiting around in water. It's a thankless job, but I hope if they come out to your house, you'll thank them and give them some coffee or hot chocolate. That's a tough job. And they do it without complaint.
I would like to just initiate a quick conversation or start one that I think will proceed over the coming months. We've talked about our pending sesquicentennial, 150 years as a city. That will be in 2019. That's now less than a year away. And I think we can see in what Kingsport has done to mark their centennial that there are some unique opportunities that exist for a city to capitalize on that milestone and do some things by way of public-private partnerships and supplement other community activities by way of celebrating that milestone. And I think to do that is going to require a level of broad-based participation and planning that if it's going to come off at the level I think we would like Johnson City to be represented by, we need to begin that conversation very soon, if not already be in the process of it. And so I lay that out there because I think we need to be doing something with it probably in the next 60 to 90 days if we're going to be ready to do something substantial in a year.
I would agree, and I would probably say we don't need to wait 60 or 90 days.
Well, I was just,
We
you
better
know.
get started on now. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, and we should celebrate it, so,
I think we may want to consider, appointing a sesquicentennial committee
yes.
with a person to chair that who, really can take it by the horns and run with it.
Perhaps our next meeting, we'll have a list of those people.
Yeah.
Very good.
Maybe you can make some suggestions. I know Mr. Stahl here is very committed to the sesquicentennial.
Just to let you know, we have, Mr. Epps has in his file, we have 2 draft, resolutions to establish, if you're inclined to do so, a sesquicentennial commission, committee, but we obtained those drafts from Kingsport and even Elizabeth when they had their bicentennial, so we can certainly circulate those to you to take a look at, see what you think, if you'd like.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? Well, let that show. We started at, 6:05? It's less than 30 minutes. This meeting is adjourned.